Chapter 15. The train did not move again. The afternoon went slowly by, then the doors of the cattle car opened. The two men were given permission to get water. When they came back, they told us that they had learned in exchange for a gold watch that this was the final destination. We were to leave the train here. There was a labor camp on site. They said that the conditions were good and the families would not be separated. Only the young would work in the factories, the old and sick would find work in the fields. Confidence soared. Suddenly we felt free of the previous night's terror. We gave thanks to God. Mrs. Schachter remained sitting in her corner, not speaking. Her little son was touching her hand. Dusk began to fill the cattle car. We ate what was left of our food. At 10 o'clock in the evening, we were all trying to find a position for a quick nap, and soon we were sleeping. Suddenly, "Look at the fire! Look at the fire! Over there!" With a start, we awoke and rushed to the window yet again. We had believed her, if only for a moment. But there was nothing outside but darkness. We returned to our places with fear eating our souls. As she went on screaming, she was hit again. Only with great difficulty did we succeed in keeping her quiet. The man in charge of our cattle car called out to a German officer walking down the platform, asking him to have the mad woman moved to a hospital car. "Patience," the German replied. "Patience. She'll be taken there soon." Around 11 o'clock, the train began to move again. We pressed against the windows. The cattle cars were rolling slowly. A quarter of an hour later, it began to slow down even more. Through the windows we saw barbed wire. We understood that this was the labor camp. We had forgotten Mrs. Schachter's existence. Suddenly there was a terrible scream. "Jews, look! Look at the fire! Look at the fire!" And as the train stopped, this time we saw a tremendous fire rising into a black sky. Mrs. Schachter became silent on her own. She had returned to her corner. We stared at the fire in the darkness. A horrible smell was in the air. Suddenly, our doors opened. Strange-looking people, dressed in striped jackets and black pants, jumped into the cattle car. Holding lights and sticks, they began to hit us, shouting, "Everybody out! Leave everything inside! Hurry up!" We jumped out. I looked at Mrs. Schachter. Her little boy was still holding her hand. In front of us, that fire. In the air, the smell of burning flesh. It must have been around midnight. We had arrived in Birkenau. Chapter 16. The objects that we had carried with us from place to place were now left behind the cattle car, and with them, finally, our illusions. Every few yards there stood a Nazi soldier, his machine gun trained on us. We followed the group. A Nazi soldier came toward us holding a club. He screamed, "Men to the left, women to the right." 8 words spoken quietly, callously, without emotion. 8 simple, short words. Yet that was the moment when I left my mother. There was no time to think, and I already felt my father's hand press against mine. We were alone. In a fraction of a second, I could see my mother, my sisters move to the right. Tizapora was holding Mother's hand. I saw them walking farther and farther away. Mother was touching my sister's blonde hair, as if to protect her. And I walked on with my father, with the men. I didn't know that this was the moment in time and the place where I was leaving my mother and Tizapora forever. I kept walking, my father holding my hand. Behind me, an old man fell to the ground. Nearby, a Nazi put his gun in his hand. My hand held on tightly to my father. All I could think of was not to lose him, not to remain alone. The SS officers gave the order. "Form groups of 5. There was chaos. It was important to stay together. "Hey kid, how old are you?" The man interviewing me was a prisoner. I could not see his face, but his voice was both afraid and warm. 15. "No, you're 18. "But I'm not," I said. "I'm 15. "Fool, listen to what I say." Then he asked my father, who answered, "I'm 50. "No," the man now sounded angry. "Not 50. You're 40. Do you hear? 18 and 40. He disappeared into the darkness. Another prisoner appeared screaming, "Sons of bitches, why have you come here? Tell me why." Someone dared to reply, "What do you think, that we came here because we wanted to? That we asked to come here?" The other seemed ready to kill him. "Shut up, stupid, or I'll tear you to pieces. You should have killed yourselves rather than come here. Didn't you know what was here in Auschwitz? You didn't know? In 1944? True, we didn't know. Nobody had told us. He couldn't believe his ears. His mood became even angrier. "Over there? Do you see the chimney over there? Do you see it? And the fire, do you see it?" Yes, we saw the fire. "Over there. That's where they will take you. Over there will be your tomb. You still don't understand? You sons of bitches? Don't you understand anything? You will be burned. Burned to ashes. Burned into ashes." His anger changed into fury. We stood terrified. Could this just be a nightmare? A horrible nightmare? I heard whispers around me. "We must do something. We can't let them kill us like that. Like animals, we must rebel." There were among us a few strong young men. They actually had knives and were encouraging us to attack the soldiers. One of them was saying, "Let the world learn about the existence of Auschwitz. Let everybody find out about it while they still have a chance to escape." But the older men asked their sons not to do anything. We mustn't give up hope. Even now, as a knife hangs over our heads, the wind of rebellion died down. We continued to walk until we came to a road. Standing in the middle of it was, though I didn't know it then, Dr. Mengele, the horrible Dr. Mengele. He looked like the typical Nazi, a cruel, strong, intelligent face. He was holding a club and was surrounded by soldiers. The club was moving, sometimes to the right, sometimes to the left. Suddenly I stood before him. "Your age?" he asked. "I'm 18. I was terrified. "In good health?" "Yes." "Your profession?" Tell him that I was a student? "Farmer." This conversation lasted no more than a few seconds. It seemed like a lifetime. The club pointed to the left. I took half a step forward. I first wanted to see where they would send my father. Were he to have gone to the right, I would have run after him. The club once more moved to the left. A weight lifted from my heart. We did not know as yet which was the better side, right or left, which road led to prison, and which to the crematorium. Still I was happy. I was near my father. Our group continued slowly to move forward. Another prisoner came over to us. "Satisfied?" "Yes," someone answered. "Poor devils, you are heading for the crematorium." He seemed to be telling the truth. Not far from us, a tremendous fire was rising from a hole in the ground. Something was being burned there. A truck drew close and stopped. Small children were carried out. Babies. Yes, I did see this with my own eyes. Children thrown into the fire. This is why, ever since then, sleep is difficult for me. So that was where we were going. A little farther on, there was another larger hole for adults. I hit myself. Was I still alive? Was I awake? How was it possible that men, women, and children were being burned, and that the world kept silent? No, all this could not be real. A nightmare, maybe. Soon I would wake up and find that I was back in the room of my childhood with my books. My father surprised me. "You should have gone with your mother. I saw many children your age go with their mothers." His voice was tremendously sad. I understood that he did not wish to see what they would do to me. He did not wish to see his only son burn in the fire. My forehead was covered with cold sweat. Still I told him that I could not believe that human beings were being burnt in our times. The world would not tolerate such evil. The world? The world is not interested in us. Today, everything is possible, even the crematorium. "Father, if that is true, then I don't want to wait. I'll run into the electrified barbed wire. That would be easier than a slow death in the fire." He didn't answer. He was weeping. His body was shaking. Everybody around us was weeping. Someone began to say the prayer for the dead. I don't know whether, during the history of the Jewish people, men have ever said before the prayer of the dead for themselves. Yiskadasal Veyishkadash Shme Rabba. May his name be celebrated, whispered my father. For the first time, I felt anger rising within me. Why should I pray this way? God was choosing to be silent. What was there to thank him for? We continued our march. We were moving closer and closer to the hole, from which a giant fire was rising. 20 more steps. If I was going to kill myself, this was the time. Our group had only some 15 steps to go. I bit my lips so that my father would not hear my teeth chattering. 10 more steps. 8, 7. We were walking slowly. Only 4 more steps. 3. There it was now, very close to us, the hole and its fire. I gathered all that remained of my strength in order to escape from the group and throw myself onto the barbed wire. Deep down, I was saying goodbye to my father, to the whole universe, and against my will, I found myself whispering the words, Yeskadal Vieskadai Shmarab. May his name be celebrated. My heart was about to explode. There, I was face to face with the angel of death. No, 2 steps from the pit, we were ordered to turn left and forced into barracks. I squeezed my father's hand. He said, "Do you remember Mrs. Schachter and the train?"